How's it going? As you can see, back out at the boat again. Something about Mondays, the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've had really nice weather, so I've been able to film out here. If you look below me here, hopefully you guys can see all these hard baits that I have laid out, and then right here, just a whole bunch of different selections of hard baits. That might lead you to what we're going to talk about this week, and that's cold water reaction bait fishing. A lot of times people are under the misconception that you need to go extremely slow in the wintertime, you need to be methodical and so forth, and you really don't. Sometimes the best way to get bites in general, catch numbers of fish, catch big fish, is throw in reaction baits. Not necessarily fast, but the hard stuff. A lot of times, and given weather scenarios and things like that, you're going to get fish that aren't going to be conducive to a real slow bite. You need to get them to react. They have lockjaw, and they really don't want to eat in general. But that's the unique thing about throwing hard baits. You can get reaction strikes. The fish don't necessarily have to be hungry. You just have to present it the right way, and you know, things have to align correctly. But we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to start out with jerkbait fishing. When it's extremely cold, water's in the like low to mid 30s, 33, 35, 36, that type of thing. When I select jerkbaits, which is what I'm throwing most, I don't quite start throwing crankbaits till 39, 40, but I'll throw jerkbaits. What I like is a jerkbait that shimmies like this. It doesn't go crazy left to right. A lot of times I'll be fishing stained or dirty water in the wintertime. The reason I don't want a bait that goes far left, far right, darts, does all that crazy stuff, is because those fish need to be able to track that bait in the wintertime, and they're moving slow. You don't want to rip a bait down to them and immediately have your bait dart 2 feet to the right or 2 feet to the left. That being said, my favorite rip baits to throw in the wintertime is probably the Lucky Craft Stacy. This one right here is a version 2, but I actually prefer throwing the version 3. This bait was designed by Gary Dobbins, and it's better for true cold water jerkbait fishing, or rip baits as we call them out here, because the version 3 is actually a slow sinking model. So what this bait's going to do is get down there, and then the fish are going to track it. And the thing about in the wintertime is you want your baits to sink very slow. A suspending bait will get bit, but if your bait starts to float, I have not very good results. I really want that bait to slowly sink. I think it has something to do where the fish is just kind of checking it out, sees it sinking, it's more natural, it's getting closer to them, and they just have to hit it. So I do much better on the slow sinking jerk baits, a lot of times the ones with the longer bills, because it kills the left to right action. You think of the action of a Vision 110. Any of you guys who have fished a Vision 110, or even a Lucky Craft pointer, you jerk it and then it goes left, right, it almost walks underwater, very wide. But these baits here, I don't rip them like this. I just pull them, you know, and let them pop. Pull, pop, mix it up. What that's going to do is get that bait down to depth, little dart, a little bit of a roll, you know, just get it to shimmy and do its thing down there. This bait I've done extremely well in super cold water. As cold a water as you'll ever bass fish, right above freezing. There's ice on the lake, etc. Some other type of rip baits that I'll throw in the really cold water is a Smithwick Rattling Rogue. This is the big size. Another reason I like this bait is it does do a little bit of the left to right darting action, but if you look at the way that Lucky Craft pointer bill comes off, it's at about a 45. This one comes off at a 45, but it's a little bit farther back. So in this bait, it's going to go farther left, farther right, similar to a Vision 110. This one doesn't go quite as far. The other thing I really like about this bait is if you listen to it, it's got a lot of rattles in it, and it's got a certain pitch that I really like. It's a good wintertime bait to fish. It's just been a producer for longer than I've been alive, so that's another one that I throw. A bait that me and my buddy have done really good on over the years right here is the OSP Power Dunk. It's actually marketed as a cover crankbait, but as you can see, it's got a bill that's similar to the Stacy, and I fish it the same way. I just pull and pop. I don't rip it very hard. Pull it down to depth, do some pops. If these baits or any of these other baits that I'm going to tell you about don't suspend or slowly sink, I highly encourage you guys to do that. A lot of guys, including Elite Series pros, will add an extra split ring to their baits. What I like to do, as you can see on this bait here, is just add a little bit of lead. I don't know what the exact material is, but it comes on a little spool, just like thread, and it's just lead, and I use it to weight my baits. I like it more than a split ring. It just keeps the hooks tighter to the bait. It's essentially all going to be the same thing. That's how I like to do it. The other jerk bait that I throw in the wintertime is a Shad Rap. A lot of people are going to say, you know, that's a crankbait or whatever, but I fish it the same way. I don't rip it, I don't crank it. I pull and sweep all these baits. I want to keep the bait in the strike zone as long as I can, keep it in the fish's face, get it to slowly sink, etc. As you can see, I have a couple here that I like to throw. These are all really old Shad Raps. I like the older ones. I find that they're a little bit less buoyant than the newer ones, easier to get to sink. You know, it's pretty straightforward. They're exceptional baits, caught big fish on them. In the dead of winter when it's extremely cold, all the way into spring starts to roll around, you get water in the 50s and so forth. As the water starts to warm, I'll start mixing in rattle trap type baits and then true crankbaits, and then I'll start fishing the jerk baits that have that darting action a little more. Vision 110s. This one right here is a Lucky Craft Flash Pointer 115. Very similar action to the Vision 110. Pointer 100, same thing. This is an Excalibur, very similar. The I'm a Flit, excellent bait. As you can see, that bait has taken on some water. It's literally, that bait has caught probably 100 fish. You know, there's a new one, for example, and as you can see, this one, it's literally missing layers of paint and it's just littered with teeth marks. But mix in those baits. I'll start throwing crankbaits. My favorite crankbait to throw as soon as winter is either transitioning into winter or transitioning out, depending on the water temperature, is a Wiggle Wart. I have 3 set out for the demonstration today. These are all the pre-Rapala Wiggle Warts. You can tell because they say Wiggle Wart underneath the bill. Something about this bait just gets it. It's got, you know, the right big fish appeal, the right numbers appeal. I don't honestly know how it's that much different than the standard Wiggle Warts, but these things get bit so good, especially in the wintertime. The Wiggle Wart, the pre-Rapala Wiggle Wart, and the Shad Raps are 2 baits that are just completely unfair to fish against in the wintertime. If you go fishing with your buddy and he's throwing one of those and you're throwing something else, there's a good chance that you're gonna get embarrassed for a couple hours that day. And then the last thing that I start transitioning into is true, like, you know, springtime crankbaits. That's Spring Craw, but it's a Moonsault 350, and I like this bait because it's got a lot of rattles. It's also one of the less buoyant crankbaits that I fish. I like less buoyant baits because I can mod them to suspend a little bit easier. Crank it down to a stump, let it suspend, do the same thing, get a reaction strike. And then lastly, as spring starts to set in, I like throwing rattle trap type baits. My absolute favorite, and this is actually the bait that transitioned me into fishing rattle traps, vibration baits, and so forth. This time of year in the winter, true yo-yo style fishing, is the Duo Realis vibration. This is a this one here is a 68, and as you can see, it's got some miles on it. It's caught a lot of fish. And this one here is the 62. Duo is also coming out with this bait here. This is the G-Fix model, and it has something to do with tungsten weighting. It's a little bit heavier, falls a little faster. My favorite for this period, winter, late winter, transitioning into spring, is the standard model. It's a little lighter. The reason why these baits are my favorite is because this bait, look at how thin it is compared to an LV 500. What that does is it cuts water faster, it gets, the action is initiated faster essentially. So this is by far one of the, you pull that rod up, it starts to load up on your rod, and it's immediately vibrating. I don't know, you guys who fish a ton of vibration style baits, rattle traps, things like that, you know that you have to get that bait before it starts to shimmy. These Duo vibrations immediately initiate into action. They fall a little bit slower and they cut through grass really good. So like I just said a minute ago, they're the baits that really got me into fishing vibration baits, rattle traps, things like that. And you know, I've never looked back since. So, you know, just to reiterate everything, when it's really cold in the winter, I don't want a bait that goes far left or right. I don't want crazy rolling action. I want a bait that gets down to depth, you know, like the Lucky Craft Stacy here, and just digs. A little bit of left or right's fine. I mod my baits to slowly sink or suspend. I sweep them normally. I don't rip them fast. I like to keep it in the strike zone, you know, especially in dirty water. The fish can't track it as good in the wintertime, and they're not willing to track it as good in the wintertime. They're cold, their metabolism's slow, and they don't want to move. They want easy meals. You know, transitioning into the baits that dart a little bit more in really early spring, late winter, when the water gets into the 50s, I'm a Flit, you know, the Lucky Craft Pointer 100. crankbaits, start throwing wiggle warts around the same period. I like pre-Rapala wiggle warts, but you know, the other ones probably get bit too. So hopefully this video helped you guys. Like I said, throwing reaction in the wintertime, it may not seem like it's the most ideal thing to do, but really, if you try it, it can be one of the most productive tactics that you'll ever use in the wintertime. I used to be a slow jig dragging type dude 3 or 4 years ago, but once I really unlearned to lock the reaction fish in the wintertime, I never go wintertime fishing without a couple rods tied up with these reaction baits. You know, sometimes the key is getting them to suspend or sink. Give it a try. Hopefully it helps you guys. Later on this week, I was actually asked by Kevin Bullington, who runs his YouTube channel, and he does a lot of bait reviews and some good on the water stuff, so check him out. He was asked by someone else what his top 5 search baits were, so stay tuned for that later on this week, maybe around Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm going to get that out to you guys, and he's going to do one, and there's a couple other people doing one, so if you can get them all together, I'm sure it'll be some good insight, and you can base your own opinions of what works for you, what you want to try, etc. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Stay tuned for next week. Like I said, I'm going to be doing this all year long, so hopefully you guys are learning something. Be sure to give me some ideas, what you guys want to see. I have a full list of 50 or 60 videos that I plan to do, but you know, it's all for naught if it's not helping you guys. So let me know how I can help you, what you want to see, what you're interested in. It could just be something individual to my tactics. You know, however it goes, let me know. Stay tuned, and thanks again.